Hello, and welcome back to part 18 of modelling a Mustang in Fusion 360. Let's just get straight into it. So, in the last episode, we were working on the bumper. If you look here, you'll notice a zigzagging line that appears on the top of the bumper. This is a red flag for me. Seeing something new for the first time in CAD when it isn't intentional is almost always a red flag. The overlap is also another thing that is concerning. By selecting and deleting the overlapping section, I've solved one problem. However, the bumper is now separated from the end, which is not good. And having a quick glance from above, I can see that they are not aligned. So usually when I have a problem on smaller CAD models, I investigate to try and understand the problem. In this case, I just want a fast fix, so I opt to change the sweep entirely. I don't know why I'm looking at it from upside down, but just having a spin around, trying to kind of come to terms with what the problem is, where it's coming from. I don't want to. If I can learn if I can understand how to fix it fast, then I would rather do that, but at this point in time I just wanted to just get it done. So I opt, instead of mirroring the original feature, I instead go to mirror the sketch. So first I'm going to select the end point of the sketch, which I will do shortly, and drag that to line up. Then I'm going to create a quick construction geometry line for mirroring the sketch. Notice how I haven't constrained any of this. It's really poor practice in modeling, but like I said, I'm just trying to get it done. So I stop that sketch, and so now the plan is, rather than creating half a sweep like it looks like there, I'm going to select both profiles. So yeah, exploring this feature. And I can't select the profile. What I should do is make the sketch one single sketch, not have two separate sketches that are mirrored, for sweep purposes anyway. So here I just tried to delete the bumper. This was a quick check to look for overlapping geometry. Sometimes there are compute errors, and that you can't solve them. I can now see this isn't one of them, like retrospectively. But you can do what I'm about to do, which is close the design, as long as you've had a recent save. Sometimes I find that can occasionally solve problems. Usually I'm at fault, and closing the design and reopening it doesn't make the blind bit of difference. But sometimes it's just worth having a check. It's basically the CAD equivalent of turning it on and off again. So what I'm hoping to see is that the bumper is how I thought I left it before, which I obviously didn't. I just hadn't noticed it. So now reopening the design, I can see the problem is still there. The overlapping still exists. The fact that the error is still there tells me the problem is with me and not the program. Yeah, it almost always is, but sometimes it's just worth a quick check. So yeah, exploring this. So deleting that as I did before. Moving the design history marker back to before the mirror. And then what I'm going to try and do is mirror the bumper across, hoping that at this point in time, not now, like I can tell it's not going to work, but looking back I thought this would work. Now if you notice, when I hover over the bumper, it selects the whole car, and that's because what I talked about in the last episode, the bumper I joined to the car and I didn't even notice it. Yeah. So now instead I'm selecting the features, and I'm holding Control or Shift, I can't remember which, I think it's Control, but it might be Shift. No, it is Control. And selecting the features I want to mirror across. I know, I can see now straight away this isn't going to work, that I'm going to get the same overlap, and that's what I did last time. I mirrored the features. The problem is the bumper was swept over halfway, and then the bumper was cut back into exactly half. By mirroring the original sweep feature, the bumper will overlap. What I should be doing is mirroring the bodies, because the body is just that bumper that's cut exactly down the half. But without mirroring the cut feature, the original bumper before I cut it went over half, if that makes any sense. So yeah. And the bumper is also joined to the car, which doesn't help. But that can be easily fixed. So now, yeah, penny in the air and penny drops. Finally, I realised that the bumper has been joined to the car. So yeah, and I was very annoyed with myself that I didn't notice this sooner. Because what it means I can do is mirror the bodies now instead of the features. So here, I'm just working in the feature tree, trying to remove that component from remove the bumper from the actual shell of the car. So quick tip: create a component before you work on it. This is something I've learned since this. I didn't do it at the time because in SolidWorks it's just a completely different system, so still like kind of learning these sort of things. But yeah, I would say, if you can, create the names of all the components you're going to be working on before you begin working on them. Not only to remind you of what has been done, but it means the design tree makes sense when you come back to it. So here I've got the bumper is actually inside the component of the bumper is actually inside the component of the car. Yeah. So now what I do, a bit bizarre, after figuring all this out, I then select the faces, which I could have done in the first place. I didn't even think of this, but what I could do now is I could just literally select the body and it would mirror across fine now. But instead, for some reason, I chose faces. But it worked, hence why I'm spinning the screen around, a celebratory pan around the car. Yeah. So, but yeah, again, trying to move, see what I'm about to do. I'm going to try and move these bodies into a different component, and it's not easy. It can be done. I've seen tutorials of it, but my advice would just be create the components before. So just at the very top of that design tree where it says the name of the file, you can click create new component and just do it. So like have wheels, bumper, the kind of major ones. I mean, if you're working on a really complex design, then just create the component just before you're about to make it, because you might not like naming conventions for like, I don't know, a part in a rocket, a component in a rocket. There'll be so many of them that you wouldn't be able to know all the components before you started designing them. But in a simple thing like this, I would say just create them all, give them the name. It tells you what you've got to do, and it means that when you come back to the file, everything is easy to find and navigate through. So yeah. Looking at that, it's symmetrical, so that's promising. Yeah. Now, think, yeah, this is what happens. I go back to this sketch. Despite having fixed the problem, I wanted to see if I could get the bumper a little bit closer. Just because I think in the real design it is a bit closer, but you see this overlapping. I don't want to create any more problems for myself, so I just I totally reject that. After I probably spent about 40 minutes trying to do something that realistically now could probably take less than 5. So yeah, I don't want any more bumper trouble, so I'm just gonna ignore it and move on to the rear of the car. So this is another problem. Trying to find the canvases and things. Like, I can see it's written on screen there, but it's quite difficult when you've butchered the naming conventions to try and find components. Like, again, I'm trying to move them to that, and at the time I had no idea why this wasn't happening, and it's due to sketches and bodies referencing other components outside of that component. It's a bit kind of difficult to get your head around, but it does make sense. Like, I understand why the problem is happening. So now I just try as much as I can to make a component, create as many components at the start of a project. So yeah, next step is the brake lights and the brand emblem. Like, I'm looking at the back of the rear of the car now, and yeah, that's kind of the next step. There's not too much left to do with the car. I'm pretty chuffed with how it's gone, and I'm opting for going to use the fit point spline tool. But first, I think, yeah, see, look, having to open up all these things to try and find the correct plane is a bit, I don't know, it's a bit difficult. What it might be worth doing with the planes that you want to work on, put the planes in the outermost assembly, so like at the very top level, so you can find all your planes easily, because some of my planes are could be used for both the wheel and the shell of the car, but because they're only like referenced inside the component of the shell, then I just end up creating more planes, and everything just gets more and more complicated. Now I'm just deleting all the the two things that failed, because they were no longer in use. It's pretty standard procedure. And yeah, having a look around the front, just checking that the bumper has worked. So yeah, I was glad to finally get that kind of fixed. Yeah, it's not perfect, and looking back on it now, it's not a difficult problem. I thought about cutting out all of these kind of failures, but I just don't think you would learn from seeing me get everything right. So yeah, best to keep it in. Right, there we go. I finally found a sketch plane I want to work on that's outside the car. I don't have to use one outside the car. I always used to do it on SolidWorks, and I've just kept that habit. To be honest, on SolidWorks you don't need to do it, but I've always found it just easier. Anyway, using kind of a fit point spline, starting to draw out the brake lights. See how it's snapping to the grid? Yeah, just zoom in a bit, and that gets rid of the problem. But yeah, it's really starting to come together now. Like, at that point in time, I felt like I was very close to the end. So that's pretty much it for this episode. I want to quickly say apologies for a bit of a wait between the last episode. I was away for 9 days, and I had no kind of pre-recorded stuff, so I got back a day ago, and I thought I'd just get straight on with it. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.